Hi everybody, this is Ellen again. I have another tutorial for you, and this time I'm going to show you how to make the long checkerboard bracelet on one loom. I'm going to have it in the original setup so that you don't need to, or anybody can make it on any loom. I'm not going to move any pin bars. It's kind of difficult at first with the, because this is 5 pin bars wide. It does put a stretch on putting it together, but it's just the initial part that we put on. Then once we get a little further, we move it, so it's a lot easier to do. It does take little tiny transfers of bands along as we go, but it isn't too hard, I think. It's just that initial part. Once you get through that, the rest of it is pretty super easy. So we'll get started. And like I said, it's on the regular setup. I'm going to kind of have my loom sideways and the other way a couple different times, but as far as, I guess, length, I talk about that first. These were 2 looms long the original way with the 5 pins across. They are a little short for my wrist, but with making it the way that we do here, you can make it as long as you want, so it won't be an issue there. First, though, we need to make the long strands that go through the entire bracelet, which on this one it's the purple. This can be made, I use 3 bands for the long strands and for the cross pieces. You don't have to use 3, you can use 2. I mean 2 would work fine too. The outside border is double banded, and I think that probably should stay that way, just because it helps hold the shape of the design. Single banding, though it's kind of neat, it doesn't have the same appearance, and I can't find my little squares right now to show you again, but it's just kind of a looser pattern. But I would definitely at least double band the insides and the outside. You can triple to give it a kind of a fuller look, which is what I'm going to do. But if I say 3 bands or 2 bands, you can kind of have that option yourself. But first we need to make the long strands, and I'm just going to take, in my case, 3 bands, wrap them around my fingers, take 3 more bands, kind of pinch them between my fingers like a T, pop the other ones off into the middle. Then if you kind of hold this, get the bands sideways, they don't want to cooperate. If you can reach your finger up, kind of put it up through the middle. These don't want to cooperate. And then just pull them out. We have a 2 long strand. I usually make them 6. I think that will be long enough to go all the way around. If you don't want to go that far, you can always add them on later. It's not too difficult to do, but do that again. 3 bands, pop it off, put your thumb up through there, or finger rather, and pull. Around the fingers, pop them off, up, put your finger up through the middle, which doesn't want to let me do. My fingers aren't that fat. Let's go. There we go. So, and just pull it back towards you. So there's 4. Five. I guess it helps if I put my finger up through here too. There's 6. So that's 1 strand right there. So you need 3 of those. I'll make these real quick, and I'll probably fast forward through this part when I do the editing, but it's the same thing repeated. Alright, so now I have my 6 strands here, or my 3 strands of 6 bands, sorry. So now what we'll do is go back to the loom, and we're just working on 5 pins, and we're going to kind of work on a slanted way here, because obviously the original setup for the long checkerboard is straight pins across, but we can't do that if we're going to use the original setup. So we're just going to kind of work on a slant here. So somewhere in the middle of your loom, we're just going to start by placing a band here and coming back towards you. These are 2 bands. This is your perimeter color. Then we'll go this way, 4. Like that. And then you'll come up here, 2 bands there, and then right here. So now you need an end cap right here, just 1 band, kind of make it tight, so 2 or 3 times around, because you don't want it to poke out too much of the design. And then what we're going to do is our long strands, we're going to take, doesn't really matter a whole lot, try and find the center, I guess, of the first one, and just place it along here like this. And then do the same thing on these pins over here. It'd be even better if you could just move over so we're not actually connected onto this pin. Move over one way or the other, doesn't matter. You'll see why in a little bit. Now we're going to lay our first cross piece here, which I'm using 3 bands again. You can use 2 here, but that's just going to go right here. And we'll go back to our other strand that we have left and put that one right over the top. So here's what we have. And then you can move this one over. I would actually even move this one so it's towards you on the pins. We don't have to kind of do all this fussing as we get past this first initial point, but it's just this first part that kind of we gotta do that with. So now what we need to do is we're going to put on 1 more strand up here, or 1 more cross piece rather, and I always look to see which one's the one we just put on, which one is underneath the band and which one is over the band. The bands that are our strands or our strings that are underneath, the next one we put on, we want them to be on top of our cross piece. So whatever, if your strand is under, then we're going to pull that back. So it'll be on these 2 sides. Then we'll put our cross piece on, and then put this back on top. Like that. So now we have our strand is under, and now it's over, and then over, under, under, over. So it's kind of the only thing we really have to watch while we're making this bracelet. Also with my strands here, I'm just kind of working in the first little spot here, or first band piece. As we go along and it gets starting to get more tension, then we'll kind of release these and work in the second group of rubber bands and so on all the way down. That just kind of, you'll gauge that as you go along. And if you think that you let it off too early and it's kind of too bunched up, you can always just pull it back to where you need it. But So, I'm actually going to move these over again too, sorry. It's only the first one that this is really an issue, so, because the other ones are easy. So like that. So now I'll turn my loom this way so we can loom out the perimeter here. So going through your end cap, you grab those top 2 bands and go to the left. And then we'll go up this side. And then go to the left again. Alright, so now this is where the kind of major fussing to get this so that it's easier for us to work with as we go along happens. What we're actually going to do is we're going to reduce working from 5 pin bars to 4, and then we're going to move these 2 bands here to down to this corner. It's not horrible, but it does take a little bit of patience to get there. I know I probably could take apart the loom, but like I said, I really would like everyone to be able to make it and to see how to do it. I'm just going to be taking off bands from the pins and kind of moving them, and we'll drop a couple bands for the next step. And at first I'll warn you that as we kind of get this off the loom, you're like, this looks like crap, it's not going to look like this when it's done. Just kind of bear with me, and as we get a couple more rows in, you'll see what it looks like. But first, to start, I'm going to take off this corner, and if you can, try and push everything over to the right side of the loom when you're taking things off. Although this one won't matter, sorry. So then you can take off this one as well. So now we look like that. Now you're going to take 2 bands, which are going to be your perimeter bands. You'll drop them right here. And we need to move this corner down here. It's not too bad, it's just the perimeter band. The middle band is a little stretchy. It's probably going to get hung up on some of the pins in the middle, but it's not too bad. Just worry about getting that bottom, both of the bottom perimeter bands on, and then the middle, and then the top bands. And then just always check to make sure, like I missed one of my bottom ones. Again. You know, it always goes so much better when I'm practicing. Then just check to make sure. Don't let it off your hook until you know that you've got the bottom, both bottom perimeter bands on, the middle band, our cross piece here, and then the top. We don't have to have this big of a transfer later, so it's really only here that it's kind of hard and an issue. So once you've got that pin there, or the bands on this pin, you come over here, you'll take off this corner, drop your 2 bands, go ahead and take off this, and you'll notice that I haven't taken these. They stretch right along with the rest of it, so just make sure those are not popping off. So we drop those 2 bands, took this one off the pin, then we'll come over here and we're going to move this one down here. So just both bottom bands, then the middle, and the top. Looks good. So once you have that, take these cross pieces, let them loose, and then you'll actually want to take these, this whole, or move them this way. Yikes. Hopefully your pin bars are more secure. We just want everything moved to the right of the pins. These middle cross pieces, they don't have to be on any pin except for this one on the end here. So they can go off to the side. Just got all of this onto the right side of your loom. As much as you can anyways. If it's too difficult, we can move it in the next step too. It's not a huge deal to do it all right now, but just kind of trying to do it all at once. So now I have everything over. I just have my cross pieces hanging up here. We've got the 2 drop bands, and I'll let loose a little tension here to show what we're doing, or what it looks like, I guess. So you can see right there that we have the start of it going on. So it's not, I mean, like I said, that's the worst part of it. Now that we have this, it's smooth sailing from here, really. We still have to move bands down and kind of rotate as we go, but it's not as bad as that one. So now, I'll tighten these back up a little bit. And like I said, these don't have to be on any pins in the middle besides these 3 right here. So now you go in and pick up your drop bands. Bring those up onto the pins. And then you'll want to check to see which band, or which cross piece, excuse me, which cross piece is on top. Like right here in the middle, this is where my on top one is. So I know that I need to pull my middle off, flip it back, and put on my bands like this. So we flip this back like that. So now all we do is we're going to loom out this little cross piece we did. I did try to do the whole thing like the original setup part this way, but it just gets more difficult to move things and more involved, so I'm just doing one at a time. I guess you just kind of gauge how much you want a bracelet on the time you want to spend on it. So we're just looming up these corner ones, pulling it over. Then we're going to move this over to the other side. You'll pop off the corners. Drop 2 perimeter color bands on those pins. Then you need to transfer this pin and this pin down to their corners. It's not as hard as it was the first time because there isn't as much stretch, there's not as much pull. Just always make sure you get both bands onto that pin before you let go. Like mine just went away. But I mean, there's not much tension, so I mean, that didn't even slide back into the bracelet where I couldn't find it. So once you move that one down there, you'll do the same thing with the other corner. This one's a little easier just because of the way the pin's shaped and where you're moving it to. Then you just move everything off to the right again. Then bring up the drop bands. Remember which one these bands on the sides are on top. So I'm going to pop those off. lay my cross bands. Just going to move this over and pull this back. Like that. Loom out your corners. Then remove your corners. Drop 2 bands for the perimeter. And then move your bands over. Flip this to the other side. And you can see I'm starting to get a lot of tension in these bands. So I mean, I can loosen these up a little bit. They don't have to be super tight all the time. It might be a little too loose, but because after we get a few more rows here, you can start pulling this to kind of get the shape that you want. You can kind of see what we've got going on so far. So I mean, it will take a while to make this way, but it is an option because not everybody has enough looms to do this. So again, bring up your drop bands. Then the middle is on top. The middle cross piece is on top. So now I want it to be on the bottom. So we'll flip the middle off. Not literally, or figuratively, I guess. Like that. Put the middle piece back on. And it's not necessary to flip these over right now because it's not too hard to do it later, but I just do it now. Loom out your corners. Like that. Pop off your corners. Drop your bands. Then you'll want to move your bands over to put your hook in through here. Just make sure if you're doing the double border that you get both bands on the pin, because that was really the only thing that I had an issue with after I took it off the loom, realizing that I only caught one of the pins, or one of the bands on the pin. I mean, it's still held together, but just sight-wise you want it to be perfect. So now we're here again. We'll just keep repeating the same pattern until we get to where we want to close it off. I think I'm getting a cold, so we're pulling these bands up, and then again, whatever bands are underneath, or wherever they're over, wherever our cross bands are over, we want them to be under next time. So you're going to remove those side strands and put on your next bands. See, it's much easier this way instead of stretching it the whole 5. Because I mean, it isn't necessary to do that when we're working this way. We do, however, need to stretch it back to close the bracelet, but that's not too hard. So again, I'm just moving these over, loom out your corners. Take off your corners. Drop your bands. Move your bands. Like so. Move this over. Bring up your drop bands. Like that. Now again, our middle piece is over, our middle cross piece here, that's where it's over, so we're going to take that one and move it off. That back. Loom up the corners. Put my hook in the right way. So I'll probably do a couple more of these, and then I will actually complete the whole bracelet on video, but I'm going to fast forward through it a little bit when I do the editing, so you can still see it. And then I'll show you when I get to the point where I'm going to close it. I'll come back and show you how I do that. Do a couple more. So we took off the corners, drop those bands, move this, move the bands over, bring up the cross, or bring up the bands, and then I'm going to move the side ones. Loom up. Remove the corners. Drop bands. Move them. And then bring these up. And then move our strand. And for some reason it's always this middle one that seems like it gets tighter than the other ones. So you notice it kind of bunches up right here. that does go away when this gets a little bit longer, but you might have to maybe tie another band in the middle just to kind of make up for that. But I want this next one to go under. Loom up the corners. Pop off. Drop bands. Move. Like that. And now I'll probably just go through and finish to where I'm going to finish on this bracelet, and then I will show you how to close it when I get close to there, so it might be quiet for a while, which some of you might like. Okay, so I'm just about done with where I want to be for the length of this bracelet. Just have 2 more rows to go, so I'm going to start getting ready for closing it off. And so I'm just going to put this last row on, or not last row, but second to last row. I'll also kind of explain what I think to do with these as well, because I know that right now they're longer than what my bracelet would be, but I'm just going to finish this row. And now we're getting to the point where we need to stretch this back out to the 5 pins so that we can continue or close this off in the 5 rows so it's the same. So I have 1 more row left that I want to put on, or that I'm going to put on, and then we'll close it. So I'm actually going to start moving this down to this pin up here. So I'm still going to drop my 2 bands. I'm going to drop them up here on this pin. And now it's going to be a stretch, but I want to move this back up here. So however, I might have to pop it off this pin right here if that's easier, which I think I might. But I just want to get it up here. And it does put a lot of stretch. So back up there on that pin. So now we're 5 pins apart. You can move this first strand one that's actually stuck. Move this over. This first strand should actually be on this row. So I'll just kind of move that over a little bit. This second strand goes on the second row. And then over here, we can still just move this one down. So I'm going to pop off this corner, drop my 2 bands, and then move this down. If you're having trouble with this corner up here moving it, you can try moving this one down first. That might work a little better, but it still does have a lot of stretch because 5 pins is pretty far to stretch the bands over. So I'm just getting everything on the other side. So I still have the last row I want to do. So I'm actually going to first I'm going to talk about these. When I made the original bracelet, 6 is what was long enough for me, and this still may be a little too short for my wrist, but because this is, you're kind of gauging as you go the stretch to give these middle strands, it does kind of bunch up a little bit. It does get a little tight in some spots, like right here I have a little curve. I don't know if you actually watched the speed up process I did earlier. I kind of had to stretch it out and re-pull it to get it kind of in a straighter pattern. So I'm actually going to leave these long like I have them, and I'm just going to, when I close this, I'm just going to put this on the top pin, and I'll adjust this strand through the bracelet as I can. You can choose to, if you're worried that it's not going to look right, if you think that you have it stretched out well enough. Like this isn't bad at all like this. It's a little bunched up, but once it's off the pins up here, you'll have more room. If you have a couple bands hanging off still, you can remove them if you need to. It's really kind of up to you on how it is after we're done. And you can see what it looks like after I've pulled this off, and you can kind of gauge what you want to do with that. But we'll just kind of go from here. So now we also want to place our bands for the end of the bracelet. I'm going to do that by just kind of moving these forward for a minute. And they're getting shorter, so I mean they'll still hang here, so they won't fall off or slide back in the bracelet. But so we're just going to lay our perimeter bands here. Still 2 bands, and we'll start kind of across from here. You'll notice that I have my red arrows are up here, so I'm kind of laying the bands backwards, I guess. But start up here. Lay 2 bands, 4 pins down. So you meet up over here. Then you'll want to place a band here, or 2 bands here, and then 2 bands up here. Then bring up the drop bands on both sides. And then we have these hanging here. This is for the very last row that you plan to put on. So I need to go over the middle one. So I'll put this one back on. And I'm just going to put it on this very last spot. And I'll try stretching the bracelet out a little bit. And I'll put my cross band here. And these side ones go over. So like that. And then we just need to do our looming of the outside perimeter. So we'll start over here in this corner. Grab the band, go over to the left. And then we'll go up to this corner up here. And stop there. And then go over here and move to the left. So that is everything. So now we can take this off the loom. I'd probably loosen it up a little bit first. Just don't lose your open spot here. Stick our hook in here. Take it off. And you can see that I'm definitely loose here on the end, so I'm going to see if I can fix that a little bit. It's kind of a good gauge. I knew that it wouldn't be perfect when I took it off, but I also wanted to show that you can stretch it out a little bit and fix it. So I'm just going to keep stretching the bands. Like right here. You can see that it's loose right there. So if I go in here, kind of go down a ways, put my hook under, and just start giving it little tugs, or maybe start a little higher up, but it's the knots that kind of get in the way of just making this slide nice and easy. Of course, I suppose if you use jelly bands, it'd be much easier. But just keep stretching. I'm actually going to stretch off camera here a little bit. this might be a two-person job, because I think that if I had another person to hold on to one end while I held on to the other end, I could totally make this work faster. But I managed to get them in there. They're definitely a little loose right there, and they could definitely be stretched down a little bit. But for me, I want this to be able to have as much stretch as possible, because it is it's can be a very short bracelet, so I just want it to be long enough for me. So I don't want to reduce or have the chance of making it too short by not including that extra little band instead of just cutting it out. And you can see here too, I can pull more down in the middle. It'll just take a little finagling to get it exactly where I want it, but that's probably the best I can do for getting this onto one loom. I think that it's a fairly easy bracelet to do, but it's just that it's a little time consuming. I think that I will fast forward through about 20-25 minutes of making the bracelet where I told you I was going to stop and just continue and finish it, but then come back and show you how to close it. So, you know, it'll take a little while to do this, but I think it's definitely worth it. It's cute. It's very, very fun, kind of retro, and I wanted everybody to be able to make it, and that's why I chose to do the one loom version the way I did. So, but that is my tutorial for my one loom. See, definitely got a little longer, and that's nice too. Anyway, yeah, this is my tutorial for my one loom long checkerboard bracelet. I hope you were able to follow it. Like I said, I think that's just the beginning part where we had to kind of switch the rows around that made it the most difficult. But once you get into the middle parts, it's pretty rhythmic and has good repetition of what you just have to do. But it's not too bad. It didn't take me too long, or as long as I thought it was going to. So, but anyways, thanks for watching, and I'll have more tutorials for you again soon.